Commander Elias Vance lay on the cold metal floor of the Shirak prison chamber. His wrists bound in glowing plasma cuffs that hummed with alien energy. Blood from a shallow cut on his temple dried slowly, itching beneath his cracked helmet. The Dauntless was blown apart in orbit by the Shirak fleet. He had seen it with his own eyes as escape pods shattered mid-flight, vaporized before they could reach safety. Elias was the only survivor, the last human taken alive by a species known across the stars for their merciless domination. The Shirak had never shown pity, never taken prisoners unless for cruel experiments or public execution. So when the heavy doors of his cell slid open with a low hiss and 2 towering insectoid guards entered, Elias knew his time had come. They pulled him up roughly and dragged him through a corridor filled with green light and the smell of burning ozone. He did not fight them. He had no strength left. Let it end, he thought. Let them do whatever they must. But instead of an execution chamber or a cold dissection table, the guards led him into a throne room unlike anything he had imagined. It was vast and quiet, with crystal pillars that shimmered in soft blue light. At the far end sat a figure, unlike the other Shirak, taller, more elegant, with shimmering silver armor that wrapped around her like liquid metal. Her eyes glowed like twin stars, and though she said nothing at first, Elias could feel her studying him. This was Herquin Zalara, ruler of the Shirak Dominion, the most feared being in 3 galaxies. He dropped to his knees without being forced, mostly because his legs couldn't hold him anymore. The guard stepped back as the queen rose from her throne and descended the steps without a sound. Her gaze was cold, unreadable. Elias clenched his jaw and met her eyes, ready for the end. But then she spoke calm, commanding, and clear. "You are not to be harmed." The guards tensed but obeyed. Elias blinked in confusion, certain he had misheard. The queen circled him slowly, her voice low but sharp. "You are Elias Vance, born on Earth, last surviving member of the vessel Dauntless, and carrier of a name once written in the stars." Elias didn't understand. How could she know so much about him? Why was he still breathing? Why? He asked, hoarse. "Why spare me?" The queen paused in front of him. "'Cause your blood carries the key to a truth buried before my kind learned to speak," she said. "You are not simply human. You are a remnant of a forgotten promise." Elias stared at her, stunned. This was not torture, not interrogation. This was something else. Before he could speak again, the queen turned and waved her hand. The guards stepped forward, gently this time, lifting Elias to his feet. "Take him to the royal chamber," she said. "He is to be protected." Elias wanted to ask 100 questions, but his voice had vanished. As he was led away from the throne room, the queen watched him go, her expression unreadable. And for the first time since the Dauntless was lost, Elias felt something strange, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in days. Hope. But beneath that hope stirred something deeper: suspicion. Why would the queen of a brutal empire spare one human? What did she mean by a forgotten promise? And what did she want with him? As the doors sealed behind him, Elias knew one thing for certain: whatever was happening, it was only the beginning. Elias sat on the edge of a wide, smooth platform inside what the Shirak called a royal chamber, though it looked more like a museum crossed with a prison of windows, glowing walls, and strange symbols pulsing softly across the ceiling. He had been given food and water, though it tasted like metal and ash. His wounds were cleaned, and his cuffs removed, yet there were always silent guards standing outside the chamber's entrance. He wasn't free, not really. He knew that. The silence weighed on him as much as the unanswered questions. Why had the Shirak queen spared him? What did she mean about his blood and her forgotten promise? He kept asking the guards for answers, but they never replied. Then, without warning, the doors parted again, and Queen Solara entered alone. She dismissed the guards with a quiet gesture, and they obeyed without question. She stood tall, her silver armor reflecting the strange light, her face calm and distant. Elias stood slowly, his heart beating faster. He didn't know what to say. She didn't speak at first. Instead, she walked slowly around the room, observing the strange artifacts placed in glass-like containers. When she finally looked at him, her eyes shimmered with something that wasn't anger, but wasn't kindness either. "You were confused?" she said, her voice soft but strong. Elias nodded slowly. "I don't understand what you want from me." She stepped closer. "Is not what I want. It's what your blood remembers." That made no sense to him. He frowned. "I don't remember anything. I'm just a commander from Earth. My ship was destroyed. That's all." She tilted her head. "Your people have forgotten their true beginning. But my kind remembers. Our history was not always war and conquest. Long ago, before the Shirok became an empire, we were weak dying. It was then that your ancestors found us." Elias stared at her, confused. "That's impossible. Humans only left the solar system a few hundred years ago." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "That is what you believe. But I speak of the first human souls who lived long before your records began. They came not with weapons, but with knowledge. They saved us from extinction. They called their work Project Calyx." The name meant nothing to Elias, but it sent a chill down his spine. "Why me?" he asked. "'Cause you carry their mark," she replied. "Your DNA has traces hidden keys only our oldest machines can read. When your ship entered our space, our sensors detected it. That's why we spared your life." Elias stepped back, feeling like the floor had shifted under him. "You're saying I'm part of some ancient experiment," she corrected him. "A legacy. A promise made by your kind and broken by time." She looked at him with something close to sorrow. "You are living proof that the first humans existed, and that changes everything." Elias tried to process what she was saying. If it were true, then humanity's history was far older and far more important than anyone on Earth believed. But before he could speak again, a low, sharp tone echoed through the chamber, and Solara's eyes narrowed. A T. She touched the device on her wrist, listened, then looked back at Elias. "There are those among my court who do not wish this truth to surface. They fear what it means for our people, for yours." Elias felt the tension in her voice. "You saying they want me dead?" She nodded. "Even now, they gather. You must stay here until I decide what to do." Elias frowned. "What do you mean, decide? You're the queen." Solara looked away, and for the first time, Elias saw uncertainty in her face. "Queen does not rule alone. I must be careful." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You are not a prisoner, Elias Vance. Not to me. But you are not safe either." The doors closed behind her, and Elias was left alone, again his mind spinning, his chest tight. The Shirok Queen had spared his life, not out of mercy, but because of something ancient in his blood. A secret that could shake the stars. And now, others wanted him dead before the truth came to light. He sat back, down, heart pounding, realizing that survival was no longer enough. He had to understand who he really was, and why the past had come back to find him. Elias woke to the sound of a soft chime echoing through the chamber, his eyes opening too. The dim green light that never changed in the alien room. And for a moment, he didn't know where he was, till memory returned like a crashing wave. The destruction of the Dauntless, the Shirok, the strange queen who had spared his life for reasons he still didn't fully understand. And the name that kept ringing in his mind like a ghost from the stars. Project Calyx. He hadn't slept well. Too many questions, too little peace. And now he needed answers before someone else decided to silence him for good. So when the door opened, and a Shirak, not dressed as a guard, but in a white and gold robe, stepped inside. Eli sat up quickly, his body stiff, but his mind sharp. The alien was tall, thin, with deep red eyes and silver-tinted skin, and held what looked like a small data tablet. And, without greeting or expression, the alien said in a voice clear and calm, "I am Vale, second scribe of the Inner Science Order. The Queen has ordered me to assist you." And Elias raised an eyebrow, unsure if he should trust this new face, but desperate for any lead. So he nodded slowly and said, "Then help me find out what Calyx really was." And to his surprise, Vale responded without hesitation, "Follow me," which Elias did, his heart pounding as they walked through silent silver corridors deeper into the massive ship. They passed no guards, no other life forms, as if this part of the vessel had been emptied, which made him uneasy. And finally, they arrived at a small chamber filled with glowing crystal panels and suspended screens showing alien scripts and symbols. And Vale activated one with a swipe, speaking softly. Calyx, classified as a pre-imperial myth by most modern records, was a series of genetic and technological interventions made by an ancient race, lost to time. Your DNA confirms you are directly connected to that race. And Elias stepped forward, feeling cold as he watched strange holograms appear in the air, humanoid figures in white, working alongside early, fragile-looking versions of the Shirak, helping them survive on a harsh world filled with storms and volcanic ash. "This doesn't make sense," Elias whispered. "We never had this history. No record of any humans before Earth's space age. Nothing about this." But Vale responded simply, "Because your kind forgot, or was made to forget," and pointed to one image in particular, a tall man with dark eyes and a scar across his face, speaking to the primitive Shirak in their own language. The translator marking his name, Dr. Kalen Vance, and Elias staggered back a step, feeling like the air had left the room, because that name was his great-grandfather's, or so he thought, though records of the Vance line were scattered and unclear after a certain point. But now it seemed the name stretched not just decades into the past, but hundreds of thousands of years. "It cannot be coincidence," Vale said. "You are descended from this man, one of the architects of the Calyx mission." And Elias sat down, gripping the edge of a table to steady himself, overwhelmed by the flood of information and by the weight suddenly pressing on his shoulders. He wasn't just a survivor now. He was a link to something forgotten, something powerful, something dangerous. "Why would humans help your people?" he asked, struggling to keep his voice calm, and Vale's answer was quick. "Because we were dying, and they believed in protecting life, not ruling it. The first humans were explorers and healers, not conquerors." And Elias looked around the room, feeling like a stranger in someone else's dream. "But your empire, your people, became warriors, conquerors," he said. "What happened?" And Vale's eyes dimmed slightly. "We evolved beyond what they taught us, or perhaps we lost our way." And then Vale leaned closer and added, "But if others in the Dominion knew what I've just shown you, they would destroy you and me to keep it buried. Not all believe our past should return." And that sent a fresh wave of unease through Elias, because it meant they were already running out of time. They had uncovered something ancient, something explosive, and soon others would come looking to silence the truth, especially if it threatened the very foundation of the Shirak's power. Elias looked again at the image of Dr. Kalen Vance and said, "What was the purpose of Calyx? Why would they leave no trace?" And Vale hesitated before answering. "'Cause they feared what might come after them. They built Calyx not only to save others, but to hide something or someone." And then the screen changed again, showing not just humans and Shirak, but a third species tall, shadowed, with glowing eyes and cloaks of darkness. Beings Elias had never seen before, and something about them made his skin crawl, even as Vale whispered, "The Weirin, they were the enemy the first humans feared most, and Calyx may have been designed to protect against their return." Key and Elias stared at the images, now understanding that this wasn't just about history or genetics, but something bigger, something buried for a reason, and now he had unearthed it. Suddenly, a sharp alarm blared through the chamber, red light flooding the walls, and Vale spun toward the door, his calm face now tense. "They found us," he said, and Elias stood, heart racing. "Who?" And Vale didn't answer, just grabbed a crystal disc from the table and tossed it to Elias. "This contains everything we found. Take it and run." But before Elias could argue, the chamber doors burst open and 2 Shirak guards stepped inside, not allies this time, their weapons raised and glowing with deadly light. And Vale stepped forward quickly, blocking their path and shouting something in the Shirak tongue. But they didn't hesitate. They opened fire. And Elias ducked behind the table as light seared the air, the smell of burned crystal filling the room. And when he looked again, Vale was on the ground, unmoving. A dark wound across his chest, his last breath shallow, eyes barely open. Elias crawled to him, pressing his hand against the wound, but Vale shook his head weakly. "Go, to EOS knee. The vault. Truth waits." And then his voice faded into silence. And Elias felt something inside him snap, not just grief, but fury, because Vale had tried to help, had believed in the truth, and now he was gone. Elias grabbed the disc, ducked past the guards who were already turning, and sprinted through the corridor, alarms ringing in every direction, the ship now alert to his escape. And he didn't know where he was going, but his feet kept moving, driven by instinct and purpose, until he reached a service hatch, forced it open, and crawled through a dark tunnel filled with steam and noise, heart pounding like a drum. He had lost too much already, his crew, his ship, his peace, but now he had something worth risking everything for. The truth about humanity's past. The mystery of Calyx, the secret buried on Ea's knee. And whatever it was, the first humans feared so badly, they erased themselves from history. And as Elias slipped through the tunnels, chased by shadows and lies, he whispered to himself, "I will finish what they started." Even though he had no idea what waited for him next, Elias moved through the maintenance shafts of the Shirak capital vessel like a hunted animal, every breath shallow, every movement silent, as distant alarms still echoed through the metal walls, telling him he had only moments left before the killers sent by the Queen's enemies closed in. He gripped the crystal data disk tighter. Its glow dim under his jacket, but its weight felt heavier than a star, because within it was the truth proof of the ancient humans, Project Calyx, the Weirin, and everything that had been buried for eons. And if he failed to get it off the ship, then Vale would have died for nothing, and the past would stay forgotten. After crawling through another narrow duct, Elias emerged into a lower hangar bay where a row of small scout vessels manned, fast and armed with cloaking systems, were docked in silence under low lights, and he crouched behind a console, scanning for guards or cameras, heart thudding in his chest. The hangar seemed empty, but he knew better than to trust silence, so he waited, breathing slowly, counting the seconds until he saw a movement of figure stepping from the shadows near one of the ships. Tall, wearing royal armor, but without a helmet, and when Elias saw the face, he froze. It was Queen Zalara. Her expression sharp, unreadable, as she moved closer, and Elias stood up slowly, unsure whether to run or speak. But she raised a hand before he could do either, and said, in a low voice, "You're being hunted. I came to stop it." And Elias didn't lower his guard, Not yet, because only hours ago she had been part of the mystery. And now, here she was, in the dark, far from her throne, and he asked with suspicion, "Why are you helping me?" And Solara stepped closer, glancing around the hangar like a shadow might leap out at any moment. Her voice tense, "Because I thought I could control this. But I was wrong," and Elias could see now that her armor was scratched, her expression wary, not like a ruler, but like a fugitive. And she added, "High Regent, Marvex has taken control of the council. He calls you a threat to our history. And now he controls the fleet." And Elias felt a fresh wave of tension rise in his chest as he asked, "So this is a coup?" And the queen nodded, just once, her eyes steady. "And I am no longer queen to them. I am only a witness to something they fear." And Elias could hardly believe what he was hearing. The ruler of the most feared empire in the galaxy reduced to hiding in her own ship, hunted like him. But she continued quickly, "You must reach Asnin before they do. If Marvex gets to the vault first, he will destroy it, and then nothing will remain of Calyx." And Elias looked at the scout ships, then back at her. "Then help me get out of here." And she nodded, moving to the console, entering a set of codes so fast his eyes barely followed, and one of the small ships hissed as it powered up silently, its hatch opening like a yawning mouth. And she turned back to him, her voice urgent. "This will take you to a relay point where a long-range vessel waits its cloaked, loyal to me." But just as she spoke, a blaring siren filled the hangar, and red lights strobed across the walls, followed by the sound of heavy boots guards were coming, and they were close. Solara spun toward the hatch, yelling, "Go, now." But Elias hesitated, watching her pull a weapon from her belt, clearly ready to cover his escape. And he shouted back, "You'll die here." But she shook her head sharply. "Better me than the truth." And, with no more time to argue, Elias ran for the ship, leaping inside as plasma fire burst through the hangar entrance, lighting the walls with sparks and smoke. He slammed the hatch shut and took the pilot's seat, hands shaking as he copied what he had seen. Solara, do switches, levers, commands, and the ship hummed to life, lifting just as the hangar shook with battle. Through the small screen, he saw Solara crouched behind a pillar, firing back at the guards who now flooded the room. And, for a moment, their eyes met hers calm, determined, filled with something between guilt and awe. Then the scout ship burst forward, launching into the cold silence of space. Elias didn't look back, even when the alarms faded and the stars surrounded him, because he knew if he did, he might turn around, and there was no time for second thoughts, not now. The ship's autonav blinked a course toward a moon-size relay station hidden inside an asteroid field, and Elias let it guide him, staring at the stars, wondering how many other secrets they held, how much his people had lost, and how he had become the key to remembering it all. When the ship landed in the dark hangar of the cloaked vessel hours later, he was met not by soldiers or drones, but by a single man in a dark robe, human in shape, with blue eyes and pale skin, who said simply, "I am Callan, guardian of the archive. You were expected." And Elias followed him through narrow corridors to a quiet room filled with screens and old relics, where the man took the data disk and slotted it into a console that whirred softly, lighting the walls with glowing text and forgotten symbols. Callan turned to Elias and said, "Project Calyx was more than a mission, it was a failsafe. The Wyrn were not destroyed, only sealed, and the vault on Asnin holds the final lock." And Elias felt the chill again, the cold finger of something ancient and unfinished brushing against his mind, as he asked, "Then what happens if they reach it before us?" And Callan looked down, voice grim, "Then the seal is broken, and the galaxy changes forever." And Elias sat down heavily, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him, the memory of Vale's sacrifice, the Queen's stand, and now this a race to a hidden vault, a final line between peace and chaos. And he knew There was no more room to hide, no time to doubt. Only a mission that had started long before he was born and was now his to finish. As the cloaked vessel prepared to jump toward Eosnine, Elias stared at the stars again, and this time he whispered, "I hope I'm ready." The journey to Eosnine was quiet but heavy. It's a kind of silence that made every second feel like a weight pressing down on Elias's chest. As the cloaked vessel glided through the edge of a dying star system, its golden light flickering like the breath of a flame long forgotten, and the stars outside seemed colder now, distant, as if they too were watching what was to come without blinking. Inside the ship, Elias stood with Callan before a large circular map projected in the air, showing the coordinates of the vault of the first flame. It's buried beneath the surface of Eosnina, planet marked dead, uninhabitable, abandoned after ancient wars had torn its skies apart. But now it seemed the key to everything, to Project Calyx, to the wearer, to the truth humanity had once known and lost. Callan's voice was calm but tense as he explained. The vault was built by the first humans as a seal, not just a hiding place. Uses light, energy from the sun itself to keep the lock closed, what they called the first flame. And Elias felt both awe and fear, because if what Callan said was true, then the planet they were heading toward was more than just a grave of the past. It was a warning. And opening the vault could either save the galaxy or burn it. When they arrived in orbit, the surface of Eos-9 looked like cracked glass, jagged mountains and deep fissures glowing faintly. No atmosphere, no sign of life. And Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine as the ship descended toward a narrow canyon marked by ancient symbols, now eroded by time. Still barely readable symbols that matched those from the Calyx data disk. They landed near a towering rock formation, and Callan handed Elias a small device shaped like a ring, saying, "This is the flame key only. A direct descendant of Callan Vance can activate the vault." And Elias took it, hesitating as he slid it onto his finger, the metal warm as if it remembered its purpose. Suited in environmental gear, they stepped out onto the surface, walking across brittle stone and past shattered statues of forgotten figures, till they reached a great stone door half buried by dust and time, carved with an image of a hand holding a sun, and Elias held out the ring, which flared to life with a soft golden glow, sending a ripple through the stone that made the ground tremble. Slowly, the door split open with a low groan, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into the heart of the planet. And without a word, they descended, the light from the ring guiding the way through a tunnel that pulsed with energy, like the planet itself was still alive, still remembering what it was meant to guard. At the bottom, they entered a massive chamber shaped like a sphere, its walls lined with ancient machines and a floating core of golden fire into Centera flame that did not burn, yet filled the air with warmth and light that touched the soul more than the skin. Callan stopped at the edge of the platform and whispered, "This is the first flame. The power, the wear and fear, the light that binds them away from us." And Elias stepped closer, feeling a strange pull in his chest, as if something inside him resonated with the flame. And memories not his own flickered in his mind, images of tall humans in white armor, the weird in shadow, the final ceiling, and the great silence that followed. But before he could step forward again, an explosion shook the ground and the chamber's lights flickered. And from the tunnel above came voices and boots-racked soldiers, not loyal to Zelara, but to Marvex, who had followed them here to stop what Elias had begun. And now he had to make a choice, run or finish what Calyx intended. Callan drew a slim blade from his belt and nodded. "Hold him off, I'll give you time." But Elias shook his head, stepping toward the flame with the ring raised, shouting over the growing noise, "This was meant for me. I won't let them take it." And the flame responded, growing brighter, reaching toward him as the ring on his finger dissolved into light. that wrapped around his hand and chest, burning strange patterns into a suit that didn't hurt but felt like being remembered by something older than stars. From the tunnel came shouts and gunfire, and Callan moved fast, taking down the first two guards with quick strikes. But more came, and Elias focused only on the flame, stepping into the light until he was at the core where a panel rose from the floor with the same handprint symbol, now glowing, waiting. He placed his hand on it, and the chamber roared as energy surged through the walls, and the flame flared so bright it filled the room with golden light, lifting Elias off the ground, suspending him in the air as images rushed into his mind. Truths buried for millennia. The first humans had created the vault, not just to seal the weir, but to leave behind a guardian. Someone who could awaken when the seal was in danger, and that someone was him, the last of the bloodline, not by chance, but by design. As the flame entered him, Elias saw the structure of the seal, understood its mechanism, a network of light that stretched beyond the planet. Through satellites hidden in deep space, powered by the flame inside him now, and he knew what he had to do: reconnect the network, relock the seal. But at a cost. If he completed the bond, he would become the Flamekeeper, unable to leave, bound to EOS 9 forever, to keep the weir entrapped. He hesitated only a second, then clenched his fist and accepted it, because the galaxy was worth the sacrifice. And as he made the connection, the chamber exploded in golden energy that surged through the tunnels and up into the sky, catching the arriving soldiers in a storm of light that pushed them back, scattered their weapons, and drove them fleeing from the vault. Callan, still standing on the platform, shielded his eyes as he watched Elias slowly descend, the flame now inside him, his eyes glowing like twin suns, his voice echoing not just through the room, but through the very stone of the planet. The seal is restored, and Callan fell to one knee, not in worship, but in awe. Moments later, the planet shifted, a hum rising from its core, and the vault's great door began to close again, sealing Elias inside as the new guardian. And Callan stood, placing a hand on the stone before whispering, "May your light never fade," then turned and climbed the stairs as the vault rumbled shut, its glow fading into silence. Above the surface, the cloaked ship waited, and Callan departed with one mission: to tell the galaxy what had happened, to spread the truth of Project Calyx, of the Weirn, and of the last human who became the flame. The vault lay silent beneath the crust of EOS 9, its stone skin now humming with warmth as the first flame pulsed steadily within, bound to Elias, whose body floated within the core chamber. No longer quite human, no longer just a man, but something more, something forged from memory, duty, and light. And though his eyes were closed, his mind moved through networks of energy stretching across dead satellites, ruined cities, and long-forgotten beacons built by the first humans. And as he reached into these places, he felt them awaken, one by one, like stars relit in the dark. And with each connection, a piece of the Weirn's prison was rebuilt, the seal restored. But while Elias worked in silence, the galaxy outside was already reacting. For Callan had returned to known space aboard the Queen's cloaked vessel, and with him came the truth, broadcast in fragments, decoded from the Calyx archives: images of the Weirn, records of the ancient war, the role of the first flame, and the identity of the last human who had willingly chosen to give up his freedom to keep the galaxy safe. And this truth moved like a storm, sparking debate, anger, and wonder across star systems long ruled by silence and fear. And in the heart of the Shirak Empire, chaos erupted. High Regent Marvex, who had declared Elias a traitor and seized control, now found his power questioned as leaders of lesser colonies demanded answers, and even his own officers began to doubt him. For if what Callan had revealed was true, then Elias was no enemy. He was a protector, and those who tried to stop him were the ones putting everyone at risk. In the middle of this storm, Queen Zalara reappeared, alive but injured. Rescued by loyalists who had hidden her in the outer moons, and she returned not with weapons, taint, but with a single speech sent across the entire Shirag network, standing before a ruined symbol of her throne, saying, "I saw with my own eyes the flame that once saved us, and I watched a man, our enemy, our last human, step into it, not to conquer us, but to guard us." And those words struck deep, softening, even hardened warriors, reminding them that sometimes strength lies not in control, but in sacrifice. While the galaxy struggled to make sense of this change, Elias remained within the vault, alone yet connected to everything. But something inside the flame began to shift, not from the Wyrn, who remained sealed, but from the system itself. For the first flame, though ancient, was not perfect, and its strength had begun to drain faster than expected. The solar conduits damaged by centuries of neglect. And Elias now saw the truth. If the flame failed, the seal would break again, and this time there would be no one left to stop it, unless he made a new choice. One final change to the system, a reset that would bind not only himself, but the entire vault into a permanent stasis loop, preserving the seal until the galaxy was ready to defend itself, or until someone else of his bloodline could take his place. It was a hard truth, because to activate the stasis protocol meant losing his consciousness, his memory, everything that made him who he was, becoming nothing more than a presence within the system, a voiceless light. But if he did not act, everything Callan had fought for, everything Vale and Zalara had risked, would be undone. As he struggled with the choice, a whisper came through the flame knot, a voice, but a memory, soft and warm, his mother's voice from a time long gone, saying, "When the fire chooses you, don't fear it, become it." And with that, Elias made his decision. He reached deep into the core, accessing the protocol left dormant for eons, and triggered it, not with hesitation, but with peace, and the flame surged around him, brighter than ever, drawing in every trace of his being, folding it into the vault, sealing it, preserving it, and locking the prison of the Wyrn once and for all. Far above, in orbit, sensors picked up the surge and then the stillness, and Callan, watching from his ship, knew instantly what had happened, and though sorrow touched his heart, pride was greater. For he had seen a new kind of guardian born, not one made of armor or blood, but of choice. As years passed, the legend of Elias the Flamekeeper grew, not as a myth, but as a turning point in history. And across the galaxy, schools taught his story, leaders quoted his sacrifice, once broken alliances began to mend. For if a man from a dead race could give everything to save others who once hated him, then perhaps peace was possible. Queen Zalara rebuilt her government, not as an empress, but as a chancellor, sharing power with the newly formed Galactic Accord, where humans, Shirag, and others worked side by side to protect the light Elias had preserved. Deep in the archives of Calyx, now open to scholars, a message played on loop, a short recording left by Elias before he activated the protocol. His face tired, but his voice calm, saying, "I was the last of my kind, but I will not be the last to care. If you are hearing this, then the seal held, and I believe you are worth protecting." And those words became a creed for many, a reminder that in the darkest choices, there can still be light. And though no one would ever see Elias again, not truly, every time the flame flared beneath ES9, scholars and travelers alike paused and looked to the sky, knowing he was still there, still watching, still choosing to protect a galaxy that had once feared him and now owed him everything.